The story of a warlike nomad, born with a bow in his hand and raised in the saddle, is a tale nearly as old as civilization itself. Throughout the centuries, the Xiongnu, Huns, Turks, and the Mongols all seared themselves into the memory of the sedentary peoples of their day. In this video, we will talk about the ones who came before, the Scythians, the original horse lords of the ancient world.
The Scythians were a nomadic people whose culture flourished between the 7th and the 3rd centuries BC on the territory ranging from Thrace in the west across the steppe of Central Asia to the Altai Mountains in the east around 4,000 kilometers inland. The geography of the open plains was ideal for nomadic tribes, so rather few Scythians preferred the settled way of life in towns and villages. As a result, most Scythians were steppe nomads who had a nomadic lifestyle, riding horses, tending herds, and living in covered wagons. They needed the urban centers only for getting the goods that they were not able to produce themselves. The Scythians were feared and admired for their valor and skill on the battlefield demonstrated in many wars, and in particular for their horsemanship. They were among the earliest people to master the art of riding, and their mobility astonished their neighbors. The migration of the Scythians from Asia eventually brought them into the territory of the Cimmerians, who had traditionally controlled the Caucasus and the plains north of the Black Sea. In the war that lasted 30 years, the Scythians destroyed the Cimmerians and set themselves up as rulers of the empire stretching from the West Persia through Syria and Judea to the borders of Egypt. The most significant event in the early history of Scythia was the invasion of Persian conquerors into its territory. The invasion of countless hordes of Tsar Darius threatened Scythia with disaster. Crossing the Danube River, Darius with his army went through the steppes for 2 months, pursuing the Scythians, who retreated without taking the fight. The Persian Tsar didn't manage to summon his opponents to a decisive battle. The Scythians motivated their refusal by the fact that they had no cities to defend and there was no cultivated land. They are just nomads leading their usual way of life. But at the same time, they constantly harassed the Persians with small forays. As a result, the army of Tsar Darius, having gone through all of Scythia and some of its neighboring lands, was forced to flee. The vanishing of the Scythians remains an unsolved ancient mystery and is still being debated. By the early 3rd century BC, the Scythian culture of the Pontic steppe suddenly disappeared. The Scythians observed a difficult funeral rite. It is described in great detail by Herodotus. When a distinguished Scythian died, his body was embalmed so that it could last for 40 days. They put rich clothes and jewelry on him. Then numerous relatives drew the body in chariot to the burial place. The most magnificent, of course, was the funeral of the kings. His body was taken to all the tribes that were in his submission. As a sign of mourning for the ruler, ordinary Scythians cut their hands and even seriously injured themselves. They pierced their hands or feet with swords. Scientists believe that the modern descendants of the Scythians are Scythians, living in the Caucasus. The Scythian language originates from the Elan language, which was spoken by tribes of Scythian Sarmatian origin. The real rulers of the steppes, the Scythians, made migrations in huge spaces. In order not to lose the graves of their ancestors in such conditions, they built mounds over them. Their value depended on the social status and material wealth of the departed. Often the height of such mounds reached 20 meters or more. A large set of weapons was necessarily placed in the grave of noble warriors. Iron swords decorated with gold, spears, bows, and arrows in special case framed with gold plate, armors, belts, helmets. Gold and silver drinking vessels were placed in special niches. Quite a lot of Scythian graves are located on the territory of the Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and of course Russia, especially on our peninsula Crimea. Among them, the mounds in which the Scythian leaders and the highest nobility rest. These include the mounds of Dortoba, Telalaevsky near Simferopol, Chayan near Yevpatoria, and especially famous is the Kuloba Mount, Hill of Ashes, discovered in 8030 near Kerch.
The Greeks had colonies in this region since the 7th century BC, but it was in the 4th century Bosporan kingdom that Greeks and Scythians truly began to live in harmony with one another, thriving as partners in the local fish, grain, and slave trades. It was here that a unique style of Greco-Scythian art developed, with Greek artisans crafting ornate gold pieces for Scythian customers, featuring both the old Scythian animal style and Greek humanistic forms as well. This Hellenic influence on Scythian material culture would extend throughout the Ponto-Caspian steppe, affecting not only Scythian art, but their arms and armor too.
Most of the finds found in the graves of the Scythians are of great interest to scientists all over the world. According to the richness of the Scythian graves, the mounds can be compared only with the Mycenaean tombs in Greece. The treasures of the Scythians are being demonstrated in museums of Russia, the Crimea, and mainly the Hermitage, the Ukraine and Kazakhstan. Why is the Scythian gold our heritage? The Scythian gold is not just a romantic image that makes us admire the culture of these gone people. It is a historic phenomenon that demonstrates us the features of the civilization of the Scythians. The Scythian gold is not just gold adornments skillfully made by unique masters. It is a symbol of their unity with nature. The Scythian gold is not just a great result of robbery raids and wars. It is a collection of priceless masterpieces.